The fluorescent lights of the hospital room hummed a monotonous tune, a stark counterpoint to the frantic rhythm of my failing heart. The crisp white sheets felt alien against my skin, a physical representation of the chasm widening between me and the world. Dr. Miller, a kind woman with weary eyes, delivered the verdict with gentle gravity. Luna, your condition is a culmination of years of relentless overwork. You've given everything to your family, and it has taken its toll. A sigh escaped my lips, a wisp of resignation in the face of inevitability. Regret? Perhaps a flicker, but no true remorse. I was Luna Blake, born Jiao Tsuetsue in a time and place so very different. I had been a peasant girl, unschooled and unrefined. Yet, by sheer force of will and tireless labor, I had raised myself and my family beyond the confines of our humble beginnings. My hands, now gnarled and frail, had once been the engines of my ambition. I had tilled the soil, coaxing life from the unforgiving earth. I had raised livestock, bartering their bounty for precious coins. I had hauled sacks of cement, my muscles screaming in protest. And I had scavenged, collecting scraps discarded by others, transforming them into something of value. Each penny saved, each sacrifice made, was an offering at the altar of my husband, Ethan's education. Ethan. He had been a poor, orphan scholar, brimming with intellect but lacking the means to cultivate it. I had seen the fire in his eyes, the potential that lay dormant within him, and I had vowed to nurture it. I had supported him through his studies, celebrating his triumphs and comforting him in his setbacks. I had become his anchor, his confidant, his unwavering support. Now he was Professor Ethan Blake, a renowned scholar, admired for his intellect and respected for his achievements. The world saw him as a man of impeccable character, a loving husband, a devoted father. They envied my good fortune, claiming I possessed a rare gift for choosing the right men. Even our adopted son, Liam, found abandoned in the snow, was now a successful entrepreneur, carving his own path in the world. Liam was never a prodigy, but a filial son who cared deeply. He was a testament to the power of love and nurture, a beacon of hope in a world often defined by cruelty. Looking back on my life, the hardships faded into insignificance, eclipsed by the warmth of accomplishment. The sacrifices were not burdens, but stepping stones that led me to where I was today. I clung to the last embers of my strength, willing myself to remain conscious. I yearned to see Ethan and Liam one last time, to feel their presence, to exchange unspoken farewells. But where were they? Perhaps they were caught in the city's unforgiving traffic. Liam, ever cautious, was probably driving with meticulous care in the brand-new car I'd bought him for his business. Ethan, no doubt, was entangled in urgent matters at the university. They were always burdening him with responsibilities, even in his twilight years. The board should give him rest. There had to be a reason. My family never left me by myself, or so I thought. "Nurse," I croaked, my voice raspy and weak. Could you call them again?" The young woman at my side, Sarah, her face a mask of professional empathy, nodded reassuringly. "Of course, Mrs. Blake. I'll try again." She dialed Ethan's number first, her brow furrowing as the phone rang unanswered. She tried again, her voice laced with concern. Still no answer. "Let me try Liam." The phone rang only twice before abruptly disconnecting. Panic surged through me, constricting my chest, stealing my breath. Sarah's worry grew, calling Liam. Finally, someone answered. She put the call on speaker. "Hello, when will you and your father be arriving? Mrs. Blake may not have much time." My heart pounded against my ribs, a desperate plea for connection. I fixed my gaze on the sterile white phone, clinging to the hope that it would bridge the distance between us. Then, a voice, cold and devoid of emotion, shattered the fragile illusion. "Why isn't she dead yet?" The voice was Liam's, yet it was unrecognizable, twisted by malice and disdain. "And she's not my mother. That pathetic, uneducated peasant? My real mother is Jessica Tang, a renowned professor who studied abroad. I'm at her and my father's wedding of the century. Don't bother us again. If we miss the auspicious hour, you'll be held responsible. As for that thick-skinned old hag who stole my mother's place for decades, she'd better have the decency to die quietly." The line went dead, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Sarah stood frozen, her face pale with shock. My mind reeled, struggling to comprehend the cruelty of those words. My son? My beloved Liam, the boy I had raised with so much love and care, the boy everyone praised for his filial piety? How could he utter such venomous sentiments? And Jessica Tang, was she just a former colleague, a friend to the family? What was this talk of a wedding? My husband, Ethan, as I lay dying, was remarrying? A maelstrom of rage and disbelief erupted within me, threatening to consume me. My breath hitched in my throat, my body convulsed uncontrollably. My eyes widened, locked in a silent scream, and then darkness descended. Was it because I was too angry that I still refused to die? Chapter 1. Unveiling the Deception. As my spirit detached from my lifeless body, floating disembodied above the hospital bed, I was granted a panoramic view of a world turned upside down. The familiar streets of my adopted city, where I had spent countless hours scavenging for recyclables, were now draped in vibrant crimson. The air thrummed with a cacophony of drums and cymbals, a boisterous celebration of a betrayal I could scarcely fathom. A magnificent procession snaked through the streets, led by a troupe of acrobatic lion dancers and followed by an extravagant dowry train, laden with treasures and symbols of prosperity. Onlookers lined the sidewalks, their faces alight with excitement, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the spectacle. And there, at the heart of the spectacle, was my husband, Ethan Blake, the man I had loved and sacrificed for, the man I had believed to be my soulmate. He was resplendent in a traditional red wedding robe, astride a magnificent white stallion, his smile tinged with a youthful shyness that belied his age. He greeted the cheering crowds with a graceful nod, reciting verses of poetry about love and reunion, his voice booming with newfound vigor. Behind him, borne aloft by 8 sturdy men, was an ornate palanquin, adorned with intricate carvings and shimmering fabrics. Within its gilded confines sat Jessica Tang, radiant in a phoenix crown and a crimson wedding dress, her beauty as sharp and calculating as a shard of glass. This was no ordinary wedding. It was a carefully orchestrated spectacle, a lavish display of wealth and power, a testament to the ruthlessness of ambition. The crowd whispered reverently, "What a beautiful love story. So inspiring." Ethan Blake and Jessica Tang, their names sound like they belong in a romantic novel. I overheard snippets of conversation, each word a dagger twisting in my heart. I always knew Luna was never a match for Professor Blake. She was just a peasant, a third wheel. And I heard she was barren, so she stole Jessica's child and raised him as her own. A strangled cry tore from my throat, a silent scream lost in the din of the celebration. I wanted to lash out, to denounce them, to expose their lies, but my disembodied spirit was powerless, adrift in a sea of indifference. The procession morphed into a motorcade, a fleet of luxury cars replacing the traditional palanquin. And then I saw him, Liam Blake, my son, my pride, my deepest betrayal. He was tenderly assisting Jessica into a sleek black BMW, the very car I had gifted him, the car that symbolized his newfound success. "Mother, be careful," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. Jessica wrinkled her nose, her expression disdainful. "I don't want to sit in a car that peasant woman has touched." Liam immediately reassured her, his loyalty as fickle as the wind. "Don't worry, Mother. It's spotless. I've never let that old hag near it." Her face softened, and she entered the car with a satisfied smile. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, each revelation more agonizing than the last. I understood now why Liam had never offered to take me for a ride in his new car, claiming his driving was too erratic for my safety. It wasn't concern, but contempt that had fueled his excuses. He was ashamed of me. The motorcade glided through the city, finally coming to a halt before a sprawling villa, its architecture a blend of Eastern and Western styles, a symbol of their wealth and status. Ethan stepped out, offering his hand to Jessica. "Welcome, my dear wife, to our new home. A place that Luna could never know, let alone visit." So, all those years, he had been hiding something from me, a secret world of luxury and privilege. He had built a love nest, a sanctuary for his true affections, while I remained oblivious, trapped in a gilded cage of his making. The scene shifted to the lavish wedding banquet, a dizzying display of wealth and extravagance. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flowers and expensive perfumes, the tables laden with delicacies from every corner of the world. Guests, dressed in their finest attire, raised their glasses in toast after toast, celebrating the union of two brilliant minds. Suddenly, a phone rang, piercing the veneer of gaiety. It was a call from the hospital, informing the family of my death, requesting someone to come and claim my body and settle the outstanding bills. Liam's face twisted with annoyance. Handle her funeral? Why should I? I don't owe her anything. It's good enough that I didn't resent her for snatching me away from my real mother for decades. Ethan scoffed, his words dripping with cold indifference. It's not my responsibility. I never considered her my wife. Jessica alone holds my heart. A crude peasant like her doesn't deserve my attention. He reached out and gently caressed Jessica's hand, his eyes filled with admiration. It was a brilliant strategy, my dear, your plan to trick her into believing she was barren. Otherwise, how could we have convinced her to willingly become a dutiful nanny for our son? Jessica smiled, a flash of triumph in her eyes. It was necessary, Ethan. We had to ensure that Liam would be raised in the proper environment, free from the influence of that woman. Tears streamed down my spectral face, each drop a testament to a lifetime of wasted love and misguided devotion. I had given them everything, my youth, my strength, my very soul, and in return, they had repaid me with lies, deceit, and contempt. Jessica Tang, for so long, I had considered you a friend, a younger sister, offering you support and guidance when you struggled to find your place in the world. I had even secretly supplemented the funds Ethan sent you, believing you to be a struggling academic. I had championed your ambitions, never suspecting the darkness that lurked beneath your polished facade. My life, my marriage, my son, all a carefully constructed illusion, a cruel joke orchestrated by those I had trusted most. No one remembered it was my birthday. No one mourned my passing. My funeral would be their wedding celebration, a final act of humiliation in a life filled with sacrifice and betrayal. Back at the hospital, the young nurse, Sarah, was frantically dialing numbers, her voice laced with desperation. She had exhausted every contact in my phone, but no one was willing to claim my body, to acknowledge my existence. Then, a call came from an unfamiliar number, a beacon of hope in the gathering darkness. She answered it, her voice trembling with anticipation. I recognized the number, a ghost from a past I had tried to bury. It was familiar, yet distant, a reminder of a life I had abandoned in pursuit of a different dream. The line connected, and for a moment, there was only silence. Then, a hesitant voice broke through the static, a voice that tugged at the deepest recesses of my memory. Sue? Is that really you? I didn't mean to intrude. I just heard that Ethan is getting married. Did you two break up? Did he hurt you? Don't be afraid. I'll make him pay. It's the least I can do. After all, I'm your brother. The last words were spoken softly, as if to himself, a confession whispered into the void. It was Samuel Zhao, my adoptive brother, Chuan Xian, the man who had shared my childhood, who had known me longer and better than anyone else in the world. Kind, diligent, thoughtful, he had always been there for me, a steadfast presence in a life filled with turmoil and uncertainty. My parents had often joked that we should marry, that we were two halves of a whole, destined to be together. But I had been blinded by the allure of Ethan, captivated by his urban charm and his intellectual prowess. Compared to Samuel's simple honesty, I had preferred Ethan's flowery pronouncements and his promises of a better life. I had seen Samuel only as a brother, a childhood friend, never recognizing the depth of his affection or the strength of his character. After my marriage to Ethan, I had slowly drifted apart from Samuel. Ethan, fearing gossip and social judgment, had discouraged our friendship, deeming it inappropriate for a married woman to maintain close ties with a male friend. And so, years had passed without a word, without a single exchange of affection. Why did he say I hadn't answered? Samuel continued, his voice filled with concern. Are you still short on money? Don't scrimp. Today is your birthday. I sent you a little money to your account to use. Don't worry about me, I don't need it. I remember that you loved dresses with flowers on them. Buy yourself one. You look amazing in anything. Tears welled in my ghostly eyes, blurring my vision. Only he remembered, only he still cared. He had never forgotten, never stopped thinking of me, even after all these years of silence and separation. No wonder the number seemed familiar. I had seen it on Ethan's phone, listed under a false name. And the account number, too, must belong to Ethan. He had been impersonating me, receiving the money meant for my comfort, using my name to enrich himself, while I lived in relative poverty. My husband had never bought me a single new dress. I hadn't bought myself anything in years, accepting their claims that I was old and unattractive, that nothing looked good on me anymore. The young nurse, finally understanding the magnitude of the deception, looked at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. She choked back a sob, her voice trembling with emotion. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Blake. You deserved so much better. Then, steeling her resolve, she spoke into the phone, her voice firm and professional. I'm sorry to inform you that Mrs. Blake passed away 2 hours ago. Can you come and claim her body? We need someone to sign the necessary paperwork. A deathly silence descended on the other end of the line, broken only by a loud crash, as if something heavy had fallen to the floor. When Samuel spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper, laced with pain and disbelief. Half an hour later, a man stood before the hospital room, his face etched with sorrow. Aged, simply dressed, he leaned heavily on a wooden cane, his frame stooped with grief. Though time had taken its toll, the lines of his face were still strong and handsome, his eyes retaining a spark of their former kindness. Only his limping gait betrayed his age and infirmity. He stopped just inside the doorway, hesitant to approach the shrouded form on the bed. His hand trembled as he slowly reached out, grasping the edge of the white sheet. He lifted the sheet, revealing my lifeless face, and for a moment, his eyes were empty, devoid of all emotion. Then, a wave of grief washed over him, contorting his features with pain. He gently closed my eyes, his touch featherlight, his expression a mixture of sorrow and regret. He sank to his knees, his body racked with sobs. "Tsue Tsue," he whispered, his voice hoarse with anguish. "I thought if I left you alone, if I didn't interfere, you would finally be happy. I was wrong. I was so wrong. If I hadn't let go, if I had fought for you, things might have been different." He clutched his chest, his breath ragged and shallow. A hacking cough tore through him, and he vomited a stream of bright red blood onto the sterile floor. The crimson stains spread like a stain, a visceral representation of the pain that consumed him. His gaze fell to his wrist, where a faded red thread was tied, a symbol of our childhood bond, a reminder of a promise he had failed to keep. With trembling hands, he reached into his worn jacket and pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle. It was a collection of worn bills and tattered savings certificates, the accumulated savings of a lifetime of hard work and frugal living. He carefully pressed the bundle into the nurse's hand, his voice barely audible. "Please, give her a decent burial. A good resting place." "Thank you," Sarah whispered, her eyes filled with tears. It was then that I understood. Samuel had never stopped loving me. He had carried the weight of his unspoken feelings for decades, silently watching as I chased after a mirage, as I fell victim to the lies and deceptions of those I had trusted most. If only I had known, If only I had recognized the true love that had been right beside me all along, my life might have been so different. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, pulling me into the depths of oblivion. Regret, resentment, and a fierce determination to change my destiny swirled within me, a potent cocktail of emotions that propelled me toward the unknown. Suddenly, everything went black. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. Luna, Samuel, are you sure you want to give all your work points to Ethan and Jessica? The harsh sun beat down through the gaps in my worn straw hat, blinding me with its intensity. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and freshly tilled earth, the sounds of labor echoing across the fields. I blinked, disoriented, and realized with a jolt of disbelief that I was no longer in the sterile confines of a hospital room. I was back. I had somehow been transported back in time, to the year 1976, to a small farming village nestled in the heart of rural China. I was Luna Blake, no longer the aged and frail woman on her deathbed, but Zhao Tsuetsue, a 17-year-old peasant girl, brimming with youthful energy and fueled by a burning desire to rewrite my destiny. Ethan Blake, Gu Changsheng, and Jessica Tang, Xia Wanyu, had been in the village for a year and a half, sent down from the city as part of a government program aimed at re-educating intellectuals through manual labor. Unlike the other educated youths, however, they rarely participated in the backbreaking work of the fields. No work, no points, no points, no food. At first, they had lived off their meager savings and stipends, but those resources had quickly dwindled. Then, they had discovered my willingness to sacrifice for them, my blind infatuation with Ethan, and my naive belief in Jessica's frailty. Ethan only had to complain once about the harshness of the sun or the monotony of the work, and I would eagerly take on most of his and Jessica's chores, secretly sharing my work points to ensure they received their fair share of rations. He complained that the communal food was lacking in nutrition, that he couldn't compete with the other villagers for the meager portions. So, every day, I would cook extra food for them, using the precious grains and vegetables my family had painstakingly cultivated. Slowly but surely, Ethan and Jessica had come to depend on me, their demands growing increasingly entitled, their gratitude as fleeting as a summer breeze. And what I couldn't handle, Samuel Zhao, Chuan Xian, would silently step in to assist, his strong arms and unwavering loyalty easing my burden. We were working ourselves to the bone, sacrificing our own well-being to support two able-bodied individuals who seemed determined to avoid any form of honest labor. Nearby, a slender young man and woman sauntered toward us, their footsteps light and carefree. Ethan Blake, 18, his face delicate and refined, his eyes holding the unmistakable arrogance of an intellectual, held out a withered lotus leaf, its edges browned and brittle under the scorching sun. He cleared his throat, striking a pose of studied nonchalance. Luna, you are the large drop of dew clinging to the lotus leaf, and I am the small drop, trembling in the wind. This lotus leaf perfectly captures your essence. Allow me to present it to you as a token of my esteem. Seeing my lack of response, he assumed that I was once again captivated by his flowery language, his eyes gleaming with self-satisfaction.
He always could put on the act.
Jessica and I aren't feeling well today, he announced, his tone casual and dismissive. We'll head back to the village. You work hard, okay? And remember to allocate some extra work points to us. We'll need them to make ends meet. He paused, as if an afterthought had just occurred to him. Oh, and by the way, we're craving wild chicken and wild apples tonight. Jessica has been feeling particularly weak lately and needs a bit of extra nourishment. Tell Samuel to prepare them for us, would you? He always makes them just the way we like them. Beside him, the girl, Jessica, adorned a lotus leaf hat perched jauntily on her head, holding a delicate pink lotus flower in her slender hand. Her face was ethereal, her features delicate, her demeanor as fragile as a butterfly. She smiled sweetly, her voice a silken whisper. Thank you, Luna. You always know how to make us feel better. You know I've never done heavy work. Since coming to the countryside, my health has been steadily declining. I can't compare to you. You grew up in the fields, so strong and capable. It's truly admirable." They seemed certain of my compliance, their faces smug with self-assurance. Without waiting for a response, they turned and began to walk away, their bodies close together, their intimacy filling the air like a suffocating fog. Their relationship was so obvious, so brazen, so lacking in even a pretense of discretion. How could I have been so blind in my past life? How could I have failed to recognize the truth that had been staring me in the face all along? My fists clenched at my sides, my nails digging into the callous skin of my palms. I fought to control my rising anger, to suppress the urge to scream at them, to tear their carefully constructed facade to shreds. I had to remain calm, to think clearly, to plan my next move with ruthless precision. "Wait," I said, my voice louder than intended, cutting through the peaceful hum of the countryside. Ethan and Jessica stopped, turning to face me with expressions of feigned surprise. The other farmers, their faces etched with years of hard labor, glanced up from their work, their curiosity piqued by the unusual interruption. Chapter 3: Seeds of Rebellion. I took a deep breath, struggling to maintain my composure. My gaze settled on the withered lotus leaf clutched in Ethan's hand, its once vibrant green now faded and brown. A sardonic smile tugged at the corners of my lips, a mask concealing the turmoil within. Deliberately, I raised the lotus leaf high above my head, ensuring that everyone in the field could see it. My voice, amplified by the stillness of the morning air, rang with newfound determination. "It's truly amazing, isn't it? These city folks have such ingenious minds. They can trade a broken, withered leaf for an entire day's worth of work points. They make those old capitalists look like amateurs." A ripple of suppressed laughter spread through the working farmers, their faces breaking into grins as they recognized the barb aimed at the privileged intellectuals. Ethan's face flushed crimson, his eyes narrowed with barely concealed fury. Jessica, too, looked taken aback, her carefully constructed facade of sweetness crumbling under the weight of my unexpected defiance. "Luna, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice laced with a brittle edge. "What's the meaning of this outburst?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, my voice dripping with mock sincerity. "I didn't realize I was being so unclear. Let me spell it out for you. It's just that I've always thought that you all cared for our family. But as we all know, we are just being taken advantage of." I paused, allowing my words to sink in, savoring the discomfiture etched on their faces. "It seems that you two have plenty of time for admiring the lotus flowers and composing poetry, but you're always too weak or too busy to work. On the surface, you present yourselves as educated youths wholeheartedly embracing the government's call to labor in the countryside, undergoing a transformative re-education. But in reality, you're nothing but lazy, entitled parasites, using your city connections and your manipulative charm to leech off the hard work of others." My words ignited a spark of resentment that had been simmering beneath the surface of the community for months. The other educated youths, those who genuinely embraced the spirit of the program and toiled alongside the villagers, exchanged knowing glances, their eyes filled with approval. They had long resented Ethan and Jessica's privileged status and their blatant shirking of responsibilities. "She's right," a burly farmer called out, his voice rough with indignation. "Since those two showed up, I've barely seen them lift a finger. They're always complaining about the work being too hard or the food being too bland." "Exactly," another chimed in, his face flushed with anger. "We're all working our fingers to the bone, getting sunburned and exhausted, while they stay as pale and delicate as lilies. They couldn't support themselves in the city, so they came to the countryside to freeload, relying on the kindness of others and the labor of women to survive." "And what about all those secret rendezvous by the lake?" a young woman added, her voice laced with bitterness. "While we're sweating in the fields, they're sneaking off for romantic trysts, whispering sweet nothings and doing who knows what else." In my previous life, I would have vehemently defended Ethan, rushing to his aid and silencing any criticism with my unwavering loyalty. I couldn't bear to hear anyone speak ill of him, convinced that he was above reproach, a paragon of virtue and intellect. But now, the scales had fallen from my eyes. I saw Ethan and Jessica for who they truly were, self-serving, manipulative, and utterly devoid of genuine compassion. I remained silent, allowing the villagers to vent their pent-up frustrations, knowing that their words were more potent than any defense I could have offered. The murmurs grew louder, the air thick with resentment. Ethan and Jessica's faces turned ashen, their eyes darting nervously from face to face, their carefully constructed image crumbling before their very eyes. They opened their mouths to protest, to offer some feeble explanation, but the villagers' anger was a dam that had finally burst, and their voices were drowned out by the rising tide of indignation. Just as the situation threatened to spiral out of control, I swayed slightly, placing a hand on my forehead, feigning a sudden wave of dizziness. I clutched my chest, gasping for air, and let out a theatrical groan. "Oh no," I moaned, my voice weak and trembling. I don't feel so good." A dramatic oof escaped my lips, followed by a simulated coughing fit, culminating in a spectacular eruption of crimson liquid, beetroot juice, carefully concealed in my cheek. The crowd gasped, their voices rising in a chorus of alarm. "Twee twee.
Oh no.
She's spitting up blood. She's been working too hard. Those city folks are going to kill her." Ethan and Jessica, their faces ashen, recoiled in horror, stumbling backward as if burned by the mere sight of my simulated ailment. As I pretended to lose consciousness, collapsing toward the unforgiving earth, a pair of strong, calloused hands reached out and caught me, preventing my fall. In the next moment, I was swept off my feet, lifted into the air, and cradled in a pair of strong, muscular arms. The world spun, and I found myself staring into the concerned face of Samuel Zhao, Chuan Xian, his jaw tight with worry, his brow furrowed with concern. His hair, damp with sweat from his labors in the fields, clung to his forehead, framing his rugged features. His eyes, dark and intense, burned with a fierce protectiveness that sent a tremor through my heart. He had come running from the far side of the fields, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his body trembling with exertion. "Luna, are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Where do you hurt?"
Samuel Zhao.
This was Zhao Chuanxian, 17 years old, the same age as me. He was a sturdy, reliable presence in my life, a man of few words but unwavering action. His skin was tanned from the sun, his features strong and angular, his demeanor quiet and unassuming. To the casual observer, he might seem simple, even a little slow-witted. But beneath his quiet exterior lay a fierce loyalty, an unwavering determination, and a heart of gold. Finally, I could bear it no longer. Slipping out of bed, I dressed quietly, determined to find some respite in the cool night air. I told Samuel that I needed to take a walk. He nodded, knowing that it was important for me. As I stepped out of the house, I was immediately enveloped by the stillness of the night. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the village, transforming the familiar landscape into a realm of shadows and secrets. Crickets chirped their incessant song, a soothing melody that barely masked the unease that gnawed at my heart. The dormitory of educated youths was at the head of the village, a large expanse of lalong grass separating it from the homes. It was a wide open space of many secrets. I was thinking about all of this when a shout emerged. I recognized one of them. The lalong reed field, a vast expanse of tall, swaying grass that separated the village from the educated youth's dormitory, was rumored to be a haven for illicit rendezvous, a place where whispered secrets and stolen kisses filled the night air. As I wandered along the edge of the field, lost in my thoughts, a faint murmur drifted towards me, carried on the gentle breeze. It was a woman's voice, soft and alluring, laced with a familiar sweetness. "Ethan," the voice purred, sending a shiver of ice down my spine. "The food in the cafeteria is so bad. It's been making me thinner, look at me." The voice belonged to Jessica Tang. "The dormitory is also so loud, you know that they have some people from the city, right? And the roof leaks, you know what I'm saying. I can't sleep. It had a childish tone that was probably not meant to be said. "Oh, little Jia, I'm so sorry. Just let me think." I could almost see them clearly and thought it would be better to just leave. But if I left, then nothing would be done. I was then in deep thought, wondering what to do. "Didn't you say that Ms. Twee had some free rooms and we could go there? Ethan, why don't you go and coax her into doing it? You know she listens to everything you say, and we wouldn't have to do a thing." "Okay, that's right. Why don't you get her to wait, or tell me what's going on? If she's still super into me, then in a couple days she'll do everything for us, so that I can come live with you." "You're right, I believe in you." After that, they got even closer, doing strange things. I was suddenly too stressed and wanted to hit something. I really needed to tell these two to not get too comfortable, or they'll get hurt. I was ready to leave, but there was something else. It was a person. It was Samuel. Before me, someone was standing, and he was only slightly smiling. All I could tell was that they did what they had to do. I looked, and I knew. He had taken out a root and handed it to me. Then all I had to do was lower myself and throw it at them so they could at least experience this feeling. After that, I struck the reed and beat them back. The voices rang out.
"Arg.
Who is it?" But suddenly they remembered that they weren't meant to be here. Those bad actions meant that everything had to be covered up, and I didn't have a choice. I had to make them suffer. I just couldn't take it any longer and rush them. "I will use all my strength. Were you even thinking?" It didn't matter if it was a man or a woman. They would all receive a punch and feel that pain. But when I was about to approach Miss Xia, Ethan shielded her and kept her away. It must have hurt. The strength I was giving out wasn't enough. I needed to strike harder. I said I needed to grab her, so that the pain could get worse. I looked and saw Miss Xia. It had worked very well. In the end, I was breathing very hard and I decided to rest. There was probably no hope, and maybe I'll just end up being nothing. I saw the opportunity to act and run away to the reed field so that no one would see them. I got back up to my feet to get away, but a voice yelled, "Samuel, what are you doing?" It was just happenstance, just something I saw. I probably didn't have the strength anymore, and my legs were probably not able to move or stand. I knew that every time after a battle it would be like this. What should I do? Now I looked back and saw Samuel looking over at me. "Why don't I just carry you?" He looked very awkward as he said that. "I am not too worried. Maybe I'll be okay." His back was broad, and even if I touched it I felt the muscles so well. I laid myself on his body and looked at the night. "Now can you give me everything, just like that?" Suddenly a light came out. Why did I think of that? It wasn't real.
Now what?
Everything was a dream. There were so many actions, I just couldn't count them all. I probably was so tired that I would fall asleep. After waiting for a long time, he started speaking again. "What did you wish for?" I saw my own face, so I had said what I really wanted so that he could hear it. "With the dream to have some cream. After you say it, the wish won't get fulfilled." After a long wait, I started hearing his voice. "I understand. Sleep, Twee Twee." He then slowly stood up so that I could hold on tight. Now he was probably carrying the weight of the world. Do you know, both of those wolves fell down the mountain? Chapter 6, The Sewing Circle. The next morning, as I was eating breakfast, Chen Onlian burst into our home, her face alight with excitement. "Twee Twee, have you heard? Gu Changsheng and Xia Wenyu fell down the mountain last night." I raised an eyebrow, trying to suppress a smile. "Oh, how did that happen?" "No one knows for sure," she said, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "But rumor has it they were sneaking around in the Lalong field when something spooked them. They took a tumble and ended up bruised and battered. They haven't been able to show their faces in the village today." She paused, then leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "And get this, I heard they were yelling for help all night, but no one wanted to come out and rescue them. Serves them right, the lazy freeloaders." I chuckled, shaking my head in amusement. It seemed that karma had finally caught up with Ethan and Jessica, delivering a well-deserved dose of humiliation. It was a small victory, but it was enough to lift my spirits and renew my resolve. Chen Onlian then looked at me for a bit. Did Gus have the eyes to see? I think you're more pretty, the miss, yeah. She looked carefully again. It must be the sun, you're looking a lot more pretty, right? Her hands started gently touching my face. You're so pretty, what should I do? I winked and shook the small cream container and said, it's because of this ice flower. Then Chan was like, wow. And her eyes opened up so big. Are you rich? Why are you buying this now?
Oh,
All those little actions made her suddenly so very tense. You didn't buy this? Don't tell me Chuan bought this. Her lips curved downwards, so I decided to say some kind of word. She said with the deepest of breaths. I didn't take any of it, so what should I do? The youth was very good, so what is her plan? I think they'll be together soon. After I heard it, I felt a pain. I said I was just going to get pigs. She then quickly told me it was okay. Everything about it was just great. Suddenly the world changed, and I realized everything. After a moment of silence, she just ran away, without saying another word. What is this story even about? She is a very weird woman. But then Chuanen came up. He was as calm as ever. Are you going to the city? Yeah, then I took out the new set of clothing and came back. Wear this. He then looked at me and just stopped, not knowing what to say. I had sewn it myself, but what of that? I think he knew how confused I was. There were a lot of people that just pretended to know something but didn't know everything. A person could easily find that kind of deception. The tailor was the best profession out there. In this world, that's what was valuable. But in my past life, I just didn't understand what they were doing, and I had followed them so closely. The world of the past was nothing but a sham. But now things were starting to get better. Now I was sewing and I looked so serious, but it must have all been a facade. Why are these so serious? Are you trying to play around with me? What are you doing? Why are you trying to hit on me? He turned very flustered, but did not deny it. There are a lot of things that happen and just remember it. I made up a lie so that she could see that she could finally tell. He saw it and didn't say any more. After he left to change, I took out the dress I had just made. You might as well have asked her to make things for me right then and there. With the way those things were happening, the past few days would just disappear. It fit me, and it looked amazing, and I think what you all want is here. There was nothing she could really do.
this story isn't a thing, is it?
I was wearing it and was looking at myself. It was all so beautiful, my God. It looked even better than I had imagined. I didn't plan to be so great. It looked like it wouldn't be a thing, but it kept growing bigger and bigger. And it was so much faster than I had imagined. The things that were happening were all a dream. What happened? Now, everything was turning dark. There was no vision. Now, all that was on me were those clothes. It felt like I had touched something I was never supposed to touch. It was so bad. What would I be like if I was asked to stay with him? We then walked out of the door, together, and walked towards the place we agreed to. What were we even thinking? I didn't have any answers for that. There was the village to be done as well. So it seemed. I looked at that path and had so many memories of running. This would take about 15 minutes, right? Or we could go on a tractor and then be done. All those thoughts then left me. After working so hard, I started to feel hungry. Now I'll just start to look forward. I was going to take out a book. But those kinds of things just couldn't be spoken. Now those kinds of words just couldn't be uttered any longer. The world had been lost. Then he met those people again. This store doesn't have what I like. Why would I even come? And there are so many memories. This city isn't my home. And then he turned around. It was a bad luck for me. Those were probably some very painful words. I think my heart is going to break into thousands of pieces. After that I said that I should have been a lot better. But what is even better? Those things that I've seen were probably just lies. Everything I wanted to say couldn't be spoken anymore. I then realized there was someone else. All the words I wanted to say and express had all been left behind. Those words just suddenly couldn't be expressed. The world has just been lost. Then I saw the two standing. Those were very painful things, and they didn't deserve to be treated that way. What kind of crazy thoughts could one even say? After getting to this point, there was no more path. I had to get away. I didn't want to hear anything anymore. It was time for me to go. Then I turned towards them
And said that was the end.
But what will I say? There was nothing but deception in our hearts. Maybe we can never be close again. I need to go. Maybe there was nothing but that after all. That was all that was in my heart, but there was no way to say it. Those were the last moments. I wanted to just close the door, but how can I express those words at that very moment? There wasn't any problem, so I won't say more and just leave. And it was all over. With those final words, I turned and fled, my heart pounding, my mind reeling. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to escape, to put as much distance as possible between me and the suffocating memories of my past. I found myself wandering through the bustling streets of the county town, the crowds of people and the cacophony of sounds providing a temporary distraction from my inner turmoil. I gazed at the shop windows, admiring the colorful displays of fabric and clothing, the traditional designs jostling alongside more modern styles. It was then that I remembered my dream, my ambition to become a successful fashion designer. In my previous life, that dream had been stifled by poverty and circumstance, sacrificed at the altar of my family's survival. But now, with a second chance at life, I had the opportunity to pursue that passion, to create a better future for myself and those I cared about. As I wandered deeper into the town, I stumbled upon a small, unassuming bookstore, its shelves overflowing with literary treasures. I stepped inside, drawn by an irresistible curiosity, and began to browse through the dusty volumes, my fingers tracing the worn spines. My gaze landed on a collection of textbooks, their covers adorned with images of scientific diagrams and mathematical equations. A thrill of excitement shot through me as I realized that these were the very books I needed to prepare for the university entrance exams. In my previous life, I had never had the opportunity to pursue higher education. My family's financial circumstances had forced me to abandon my studies at a young age and devote myself to earning a living. But now, with the prospect of the entrance exams being restored, I had the chance to fulfill my lifelong ambition, to acquire the knowledge and skills I needed to pursue my dreams. I gathered the textbooks in my arms, my heart pounding with anticipation. But as I approached the counter to pay, I realized that I had spent all my money on the fabric, the meat, the buns, and more. I had nothing left to buy the books. Despair washed over me, threatening to extinguish the flickering flame of hope that had begun to burn within me. I couldn't afford to buy the books. I couldn't pay for them. I had failed. As I turned to leave, defeated and disheartened, a voice called out from behind me. "Excuse me, miss," the voice said. "Are those the books you were looking for?" I turned to see a young man standing behind me, his face kind and gentle, his eyes filled with understanding. "Yes," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't afford them." The young man smiled. "I'd be glad to help you." "Don't do that, I've made up my mind." I said I had been doing so many crazy things lately that I wanted to change. As the youth was getting ready to say something, he then changed his mind. Then they had asked me what my name was. As I got ready to say it, I stopped myself and just said it was what the rest of you all have. Then the man was nodding to everything. As they were talking, I was just checking myself out again. The man was then staring at me intently and said that he knew something that I didn't. He then said he wanted to talk for longer with me, so he'd like to make an offer. That was a lot. I thought it couldn't just go on for a long time. I suddenly said the man was too kind. He said that if you say you're kind, then you can't change it. And it's probably the worst decision. But I don't really mind too much. Then that was the time where I just wanted to get away. He was doing what she asked, so what should I even have done? I asked them if their face even hurt. The other person didn't respond.
It was so hard to watch.
All of the world seemed like they'd be crying all of the time. I turned around and said it was all okay. After I'd said it, I had to do everything again. It was so strange. That day it would all feel so real again. There wasn't another time for what they all did. I had to go. Please just help me with this. It was so hard, but I wanted to say I had to change it. But this was all the wrong way to act. It was bad to be there and to be told how I wanted to run my life. It was all going to be so hard. But after that it would all pass. It was as if all of this power was coming into my head. I couldn't stand it. The other person was saying that the next time she saw me, the power would come and fill my face, that all had just been a dream. How could I ever forget? Those were what I should be running far away from. After that, the rain was falling, and a lot of people were walking in the snow. Those weren't people that I knew. In the end, everything is what I felt. The whole world. After taking care of them, I was so very tired. That was all the time I had. Everything is gone. I have to do what I need to do. This probably won't be for very long. And I really had wanted to become so much stronger. Chapter 7. An Unexpected Revelation. Back in the village, life had settled into a new, albeit precarious, equilibrium. Ethan, seemingly humbled by his recent fall from grace, had redoubled his efforts to earn my forgiveness and regain my trust. He helped with the chores, worked diligently in the fields, and even attempted to learn a few basic sewing skills, much to my amusement. I, in turn, tried to be more forgiving, to see the good in him, to believe that he was genuinely striving to change. But the ghost of Jessica Tang continued to haunt our relationship, a constant reminder of the lies and betrayals that had shattered my world. One afternoon, as I was sorting through a pile of newly acquired fabric, Samuel entered the house, his face etched with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Luna," he said, his voice low, "I need to talk to you about something." I looked up, my heart sinking. Samuel was never one to mince words, and his serious expression told me that whatever he had to say was of grave importance. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated for a moment, his eyes searching mine, as if trying to gauge my readiness to hear what he was about to reveal. "It's about Liam," he said, his voice tight. "I overheard something in the village today that I think you need to know." My heart skipped a beat, a cold premonition settling in my stomach. "What did you hear?" "I was helping Old Man Chun with his pig slaughter," Samuel began, his voice guarded. "And some of the other men were talking about Gu Chongsheng and Xie Wanyu. They said that the two of them have been sneaking around at night. They think the thing is that Gus Chongsheng will want to be the secretary of the district, so they have to keep the pig slaughter up. They don't like going, and they started fighting all the time. I went over to tell them to shut up when I heard what they said next, and that it was just me. Everyone who is a man there will probably get hurt. A woman always gets hurt more. What do you mean their business is always done? The family should do it all." But it was to see who the real father of Liam is. I was suddenly short for breath. It can't be. Is that right? What should I do? It wasn't a good feeling. The child wasn't born for her. It just happened. She probably hasn't been able to birth a child again. So who cares? If that was me, then it would be a different story. You understand it, so listen to what he says. There aren't any problems if you do this. "I'm so sorry," Samuel said, his voice filled with sympathy. "I didn't want you to find out this way, but I thought you deserved to know the truth." I stared at him, my mind reeling, struggling to process the implications of his words. Liam, my son, the boy I had raised with so much love and care, might not even be my own. And Ethan, the man I had devoted my life to, had been deceiving me for decades, using me as a surrogate mother to raise another woman's child. It was too much to bear. The pain of betrayal, the weight of deceit, threatened to crush me. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a scream. "Luna," Samuel said, his voice filled with concern. "Are you okay? You look like you're about to faint." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog that had descended over my mind. I need to be alone," I stammered. "Please, just leave me alone." Samuel hesitated for a moment, his eyes filled with worry, but he recognized the desperate plea in my voice. With a sigh, he nodded and turned to leave, his footsteps heavy with regret. As soon as he was gone, I sank to the floor, my body racked with sobs. It was as if a dam had burst within me, releasing a torrent of pent-up emotions that threatened to drown me. Rage, grief, humiliation, and despair swirled within me, tearing at my heart and clouding my mind. How could Ethan have done this to me? How could he have been so cruel, so heartless, so utterly devoid of compassion? Had our love been nothing but a sham, a carefully constructed facade designed to conceal his own selfish desires? Had I been nothing more than a pawn in his twisted game, a tool to be used and discarded at his convenience? And Liam, how could he not even know who his parents were? Did that even matter at this point? If you can't be told the truth, there is something wrong with you in this world.
I wish someone would think about me.
I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the pain, to escape the crushing weight of reality. But the images continued to flood my mind, each one a fresh reminder of my humiliation and betrayal. Chapter 8. A Confrontation. The next morning, I awoke with a steely resolve hardening my heart. I could no longer afford to wallow in self-pity, to succumb to the despair that threatened to consume me. I had a plan. I'd been working hard for so long. If he didn't start acting like he was going to give everything to me, then I'd end everything. He said that was right, and that we have to go work somewhere else. All those people here know about how strong the person is. What are they all going to say about it? But it's all worth it. Everything comes to someone eventually, and everything was going to be a good thing. He said there's nothing to know. I'm the only one who knows that, so it all happened by accident. It is all nothing but lies. How long can you do that for? So he better be honest and not do the evil things again. I had to act well. All the power was in front of me, and nothing bad will ever come to me. I needed to find out the truth, and then to get to change it in any way, shape, or form. But how should I go about it? He is always trying to say it. I was going to turn around. He would look at me and not be so bad. In the end, it just had to be a play. If it goes well, then it will be a miracle. He'll always say the bad things, and then not have the chance to say anything. What kind of life am I going to have? It was what we had decided. The other person can't have too much. I don't understand. Why is he doing that? That all sounds like a lie. What can I make for myself? All of it was nothing. There's nothing there. There wasn't even the chance for it to work out. After thinking about it for so long, it just hurt, and you can't talk with that person about it. If there is something we should say, then we can say it. I put myself in a good mood, so I won't think about that and head that way. I needed to ask it myself, or else what happens is past. Those weren't the days I wanted to have. I knew that if I looked back, it would just be the wrong action. At that point, I would be too late. If I kept on going, then what? It was not real, or ever that good. And not good to let me see the next thing happening. There are never too many things to do. There's just never enough. Those words made me smile. Everything is very good with the both of us, and we're finally getting the right way. Now it was time to act. After saying those things, I started. Those words, for them to do, it had to work out in the end. When I got back, he said things would be very bad. If he was going to be so bad, then I would start thinking about everything. The world is right now with her, so I would be a lot better and stronger. So now, let me finally tell the truth. All of it didn't say what the truth was, and didn't let me see it. You all knew the truth. At that moment, I had to act. The person right now wasn't me. I had to be strong, that was all. Chapter 9. The Weight of Truth. With a deep breath, I grabbed my purse and left the house. I was going to find Ethan and Jessica, and I was going to demand the truth. I had endured enough lies, enough deceit, enough pain. It was time for them to answer for their actions. I found them at a small tea house in the center of town, their heads bent low in hushed conversation, their bodies close together, their body language betraying a familiarity that sent a fresh wave of anger washing over me. They were so entrenched in their own selfish world that they didn't notice me until I was standing right beside their table, my face a mask of fury. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "I need to talk to you.
Now."
He looked up, his eyes widening in surprise, then shifting nervously to Jessica, who regarded me with a cool, appraising gaze. "Luna," he said, his voice faltering. "What are you doing here? Can't this wait?" "No, it can't," I said, my voice rising. "I know the truth, Ethan. I know about Liam. I know about everything." Jessica's eyes narrowed, her lips curving into a disdainful smirk. "So, you finally found out," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I always knew it was only a matter of time." "How could you do this to me, Ethan?" I demanded, my voice cracking with emotion. "How could you lie to me all these years? How could you let me raise another woman's child as my own?" He looked down, his face contorted with shame. I didn't mean for things to turn out this way," he stammered. "It just happened." "It just happened?" I scoffed, my voice laced with bitterness. "Is that what you're going to tell me? That you accidentally had an affair with Jessica and then accidentally let me raise her child? Do you think I'm stupid, Ethan? Do you think I'm so naive that I'll believe that pathetic excuse?" Jessica leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Oh, please, Luna," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Don't act so surprised. You always knew that you weren't good enough for Ethan. You were just a simple peasant girl, with nothing to offer him but your hard work and your blind devotion. I was his intellectual equal, his soulmate, the woman who truly understood him." "And what about Liam?" I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. "Does he even know the truth? Does he know that you're not his real mother?" Jessica hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering with unease. "That's none of your concern," she said, her voice sharp. "Liam is my son, and I will continue to raise him as such. He doesn't need to know about the complications of his birth." "You're despicable," I spat, my voice filled with disgust. "You're both despicable. You've used me, you've lied to me, and you've destroyed my life. I can't believe I ever loved you, Ethan. I can't believe I ever trusted you, Jessica." Ethan reached out a hand, as if to touch me, but I recoiled from his touch, my body trembling with revulsion. "Don't," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't you dare touch me. I never want to see you again. I never want to hear your voice again. Just get out of my life and leave me alone." Tears welled in my eyes, blurring my vision, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down, of knowing how deeply they had hurt me. With a final, scathing glance, I turned and walked away, leaving them sitting at the table, their faces a mixture of guilt and defiance. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I couldn't stay in that village, not with the constant reminders of my past betrayals. It was time for me to start over, to build a new life for myself, far away from the lies and deceit that had consumed me for so long. Chapter 10: Leaving the Past Behind. The next morning, I packed my meager belongings into a small suitcase, my heart heavy with a mixture of sadness and determination. I was leaving everything behind: my home, my family, my friends. But I knew that I couldn't stay, that I needed to escape the suffocating weight of my past and forge a new path for myself. I left a note for my parents, explaining my reasons for leaving and assuring them that I would be all right. I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth about Ethan and Jessica, knowing how deeply it would hurt them. I simply said that I needed a change, that I needed to find myself. As I walked toward the bus stop, my eyes fell upon Samuel's house. I almost walked past it, wanting to keep my head down in shame, but I stopped. It was the right thing to do. I would be forever grateful. Taking a deep breath, I headed up the small path that was lined with sunflowers. I'd always loved sunflowers. They were bright and cheerful and seemed to always follow the light. As I neared the house, I could hear Samuel chopping wood in the back. I continued around the house, to find him, his brow furrowed in concentration as he brought the axe down on a log. He was so strong and steady and good. How could I have been so blind? He lifted the axe again, and I called out to him, "Samuel." He turned, dropping the axe with a thud. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw me, his face softening into a gentle smile. "Luna, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice soft and concerned. "Are you all right?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight with emotion. "I'm leaving, Samuel," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't stay here anymore." His eyes widened with alarm. "Leaving? Where are you going? What happened?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. It's complicated, I said, my voice shaking. I just need to get away, to start over somewhere new. He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine, his hand reaching out to gently touch my arm. Did Ethan do something to you? He asked, his voice filled with anger. If he hurt you, I swear I shook my head, cutting him off. It's not just Ethan, I said, my voice cracking with emotion. It's everything. I can't explain it all now. I just need you to know that I'm leaving, and I don't know when I'll be back. Tears welled in his eyes, and he stared at me for a long moment. It looked as if he didn't want to say anything. Finally, he had the strength to give the tears. He said that even now I am still being hurt so deeply, and just continued to stare. Then after a moment he said that I am a star that deserves only what it was owed. The time was not right, but what did he even say? I'll probably never understand.
Before saying what I want to say next, it was a lot about me.
If I go on a path that isn't good, then it wouldn't turn out right for me. Then I smiled as I got ready to leave, not sure what was going to happen. We stared at each other without another word, his eyes full of hurt and worry, while mine were those to say I have what I needed to get done. Everything will probably get okay for you. And that is why I went away. As I walked along with all my belongings, I thought that everyone who saw everything would probably be very kind, and that it's been a lot of help for me. Then that was when it was finally time to leave. That village, those people. It was time to start fresh. It won't be easy, but everything good never is. The trip was nothing that I wanted. All of that seemed to be a waste of my time and energy. It won't be very long until all of it is forgotten, and there will never be that amount of suffering again. I just want to live a good life. Why can't all of us say that? And I approached the bus stop, and it was time to leave. That world would never be something to touch. Then I was very lonely and very far away. I really want to live freely and do what I want to do. There is what is needed,